California, any time of year, you can find it here. Her man is Tiffany twisted, she's got the Mercedes Benz. She's got a lot of pretty boys she calls friends. How they dance in the courtyard, sweet summer sweats. Some dance to remember, some dance to forget. So I called up the captain, please bring me my wine. He said we haven't had the spirit here since 1969. And still those voices are calling from far away. I'll wake you up in the middle of the night just to hear you say, welcome to the homes of California. Such a lovely place, such a lovely face. They're living it up at the Hotel California. What a nice surprise. Bring your alibi.
Check, check. All right. Hello, everybody, again, and thank you for joining us today at Kotowa. The idea of these Deep in Thoughts is to talk a little deeper about all things coffee, all things wine, and trying to share a little bit about both experiences, open the floor up, and create interesting discussions. Today, we're here at the beautiful Kotowa farm. We just did a beautiful tour of the farm. We cupped some beautiful coffee. And I'm going to introduce our very esteemed panel here this morning or afternoon. All right, so we try to combine at least one coffee producer, one wine producer, maybe a sommelier, importer, however the day goes. So to my left, we have Ángel García Cordero from Finca Sandoval. He's a Spanish businessman, owner of Finca Sandoval, wine producer from Ledaña in the Manchuela region of Spain. Since 2019, Ángel and his team has focused on rescuing local varietals and old vineyards, some that were almost extinct, right? And expressing them at their best through sustainable practices. Their mission is to express the terroir of the wines from Manchuela. Their wines are enjoyed all over the world. They're enjoyed in Panama via Abaton and Gobi. Ángel is a great friend of Panama, a fan of Panama coffee. We've enjoyed a couple of times. So welcome, Ángel. Let's welcome Ángel. Yay. To his left, Gobinjiro, or we call him Gobi, is a wine importer here in Panama from Abaton Wines. They have really changed the landscape of the wines we receive here in Panama. They've taken many risks along the way, risks that we are very grateful they took because it gives us the opportunity to have amazing wine selections in our restaurants and our guests. Govi has a great palate, a great taste. He uses Panama Geisha as a descriptor for many of his wine reviews, which I thoroughly enjoy. And he also has single-handedly introduced Panama Geisha to a lot of wine producers when he travels or where they come to meet with him. So welcome, Gobi, to the panel this morning. Yeah, Gobi, woo! And to his left, we have Ricardo and Victoria Koiner, which we're very happy they hosted us here at their beautiful farm today. As Ricardo said earlier today, but I'll say it again so it's in the video, a fourth-generation coffee producer from Boquete. Him and his family have propelled coffee culture not only at the farm level, but also consumption, because they have coffee shops in Panama as well, Kotowa. Nowadays, Ricardo and Victoria produce amazing coffees with a strong focus on sustainability, terroir, innovating with new coffee varietals. Victoria has been cupping since she was way before she was 18 at the farm and also as a judge for the Best of Panama. She's also a wine enthusiast and graduated recently from Oregon State in food science, right? Enology. Thank you for hosting us today. And Let's give him a thanks again for having us. Thank you, Ricardo and Victoria. All right, so I'm going to open up a quick couple questions. The idea is not to go too long, and then we'll, shoot a question to somebody, and then somebody can respond as well in the panel, okay? So the first question is a little bit about terroir, okay? So in Finca Sandoval, one of the pillars is to restore the relevance of the terroir in Manchuela. In Panama, the same work has been done for a couple of years to teach people about Panama coffee and Panama terroir. Could you guys, Angel and Ricardo and Victoria, talk a little bit about what makes your terroir at each of your farms unique and how that impacts the flavor profile of each of you guys' product? Feel free to start, whoever.
Just go.
You know, when we talk about terroir, you have to think about all the variables that are going to affect it. And terroir is really the combination of things like soils, and you have to remember that Panama has gone through an evolution of times where different types of soils have come out of the ground, either because they came out of the ocean or of volcanic eruption. So as you go around the area, you see a variety of soil types. So they are chemically, and the minerals are different. So that's one thing. And then also the climate. The climate, what happens is that we're very close to both the Caribbean and the and the Pacific Oceans. So we're going to have an influence of rains, winds, and temperatures. The winds that come from the Caribbean are a lot cooler than the Pacific. So depending on where you're in the mountain, you're going to have a different soil profile. You're going to have a different weather type. It might be raining on one side of Boquete where it's dry on the other side of Boquete. And you're going to have different temperatures. And what that does, it changes the flora. It changes the type of plants that grow around it. And so you see green around, but it's not the same types of plants. Or it could be the same types, but they host different microorganisms. And it's in those microorganisms where everything is happening. Those microorganisms, they're affecting all the way from the intake of nutrients, of different types of nutrients that are in the different minerals of different soils. They're in the plant, and this is a whole new area of science that is evolving. We know a lot about human microorganisms in our gut, in our system, but it's just barely starting to be understood of what happens with the microorganisms inside the plants and how they're affecting the development of flavors. And then once the coffee is ready, you have microorganisms that are going to be affecting the fermentation that's going to be happening. And it depends on what area of Boquete you are, because they're different. We're going in the Specialty Coffee Association, we're right now pushing some research on trying to categorize all the microorganisms that we have around. But that's just barely scratching the surface of this, because then you need to understand all the complexities of they don't act at the same time. So if you have a higher temperature in one place, 2 degrees, some stay behind and then others act. When you're fermenting, if you have more humidity or more sun, some of them will act on one type of condition and others in another. So it's just, there's a bunch of doors. You open one, you have like 50 doors, and then you open another one, there's 50 doors. It's a very complex system. But what we know, it's that the effect of the microorganisms is really what is driving the flavor profiles, and that's where the terroir lies.
Ricardo, Angel, you want to talk a little bit about your neck of the woods in Manchuela?
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm still wondering what am I doing here with this panel of experts. I mean, having Niport with us or Antoine Ruiz, maybe I can add the perspective of an investor, a guy that bought a winery and it wants to go back to the way the wine was produced thousands of years ago. So it's not my first investment in a winery. This is probably my fourth. One worked, the other didn't work, but I have really enjoyed and I keep learning. Manchuela is part of Spain that belongs to Castilla-La Mancha, where in the rest of Castilla-La Mancha, wine was never produced. So Ribera del Duero, you might be familiar with those parts of Spain, started producing wine a few years ago with Vega Sicilia, same with other parts of Spain. Manchuela produced wine thousands of years ago. So we decided to buy that winery to do things like they were doing hundreds of years ago. And I could elaborate a little bit more on that. But we wanted to, like you were saying, Benny, to recuperate the traditional varieties that were produced in the area many years ago and that have mostly been lost. So we are basically working with a red variety by the name of Bhopal that exists everywhere else, and some other people are growing in the area, but we went back to the way that it was produced. Let me give you an example. When we harvest whatever's in the plot. So in one of our wines, Bhopal, in the plot there's 30%, around 30% of white variety, and we harvest it together and we produce a wine that has 30% white grapes on it. Also, something that really attracted us was the fact that the former owner, that unfortunately passed away in October of last year, decided to replicate the Northern Rhone in Manchuela. So the guys saw certain similarities in terms of altitude, in terms of soil, in the terroir, and brought Syrah from Chateau de Beaucastel and planted 12 hectares of Syrah. And we, according to Parker, we're producing the best Syrah in Spain. I have to agree on that. So what does the terroir brings to our wines? Well, almost everything, right? We do the wines versus the way that Victor, the former owner, did in the past. We do our wines on the field. I mean, we decide what plots are going to be we're going to be using for the wine. So we don't just bring we don't decide at the winery. We decide it at the terroir. So we have recuperated a variety that almost nobody used as a white variety by the name of Pardillo. They call it Marisancho. And we produced the great wine that some of you tasted yesterday by the name of Aurora, my mother. So terroir, altitude, latitude, many things that help us to decide the wines that we're producing.
Thank you, Angel, for sharing. All right, keeping in that vein and learning a little bit about Cotowa and Finca Sandoval, you guys are about 1,000 meters above sea level in altitude, and altitude plays a big part in Panama coffee and Panama geisha. So I wanted to ask you both, you guys, how that contributes to your cup, and also if it presents any challenges as well in producing quality versus amount being produced, and the challenges of being at high altitude. Anybody?
Okay, so altitude really means temperature. The higher you go, the lower the temperatures you're going to get. So in coffee, when you're in a warmer climate, everything's going to go faster. If you grow coffee at sea level, you're probably going to bear seeds in 2 years. If you grow coffee at 1,300, it's going to take 4 years. If you go up to 2,000, it's going to take 6 years before you can bear any fruit. And from the flower to the maturity of the bean, at sea level, it's going to be about 6 months. At higher altitudes, 2,000 meters, it's going to be 11 months. So everything is going to happen slower. That's one thing. Second thing is that temperature has a lot to do with what's called the enzymatic reactions, with what pushes things that make things happen in the bean. And some of these compounds, when they're in colder temperature, what they do is they create more. The time that they have and the compounds that they create are the aromatic compounds are more expressive. So you get more expression when you're in lower temperatures because of the speed it happens and because of the need of lower temperatures to trigger certain compounds to be produced. So it's about temperatures.
I want to add to that just like Angel mentioned, the Syrah, some work that we have to do in Panama is always trying to match the varieties that we grow with the terroir that we have. So we do know of some varieties that don't. So we have found that geisha does the best at the highest altitude, yes, but not all the others. And we do have other farms on lower temperatures. So that's also one of the reasons why we plant so many varieties. There's many varieties out there that come from drier environments that like it not so wet. We have other farms where we have rain like 10 out of 12 months in the year, where we need varieties that can adapt to that high humidity levels. So all of those other varieties, variables are taking place in the farms.
Well, little to add to what they said, because it's basically temperature. So every 100 meters, I think, is 0.6 degrees Celsius. So the higher you go, the cooler the temperature is. And in areas like where Manchuela is, very close to the Mediterranean, if we didn't have this between 700 and 1,000 meters altitude, we could not produce the wines we are producing. To my big surprise, now in areas that are close to us in Jumilla, they're producing excellent wines. José María, Carlos Terrón, and these guys don't have the altitude that we enjoy. Probably the grapes that we use, Bobal, it would not be possible to grow Bobal at a lower altitude. So we pretty much are doing what our ancestors thought that we could be doing at that altitude. And it really helps. The change in temperatures from in the morning till the night, it also helps. But again, altitude is key to what we are doing. And just at 500 meters, we could not be doing the wines we're doing.
Thank you, guys. Yes. Sure.
Okay. The knowledge around coffee, growing the right varietals at the right altitudes, is that a fairly new thing that you are doing within the last 20, 30 years where specialty coffee is growing? Or is it something that your great-grandfather started already? Or are there books you can look in knowing about this?
Well, the specialty coffee started looking at coffees on their cup profile in the last 20 years. Before that, it was more production. So our fathers, they knew where it would grow coffee good or not, but they were not so keen on the flavor profile as we are today that we're looking. So basically, we're looking at what happens and where it happens. And remember, because we have all these currents of air in different temperatures, so and because, like Victoria said, some varieties can go higher than others, and some will benefit more of that coldness or temperature. So we're testing that. It's something that everybody's testing here. We need to understand it, but it's complex because you grow it, but the type of process will also affect it. So once you put more than one variable in there, it starts to get complicated. Yeah.
To add to that, just in the last 15 years, I feel like we didn't have as many varieties as we have today, or the industry itself wasn't focused on like the diversity that it was. When I was growing up, I just knew, Típica, Catuay, Caturra, Geisha, maybe Pacamara, but that was like about it. Now we know of like hundreds of varieties out there, and there's research centers also breeding new varieties for different diseases or different climates. So that's also what's happening now.
Okay, so it's kind of pioneer work. Yes.
I have a question regarding altitude. So we have talked about altitude and temperature. What about altitude and oxygen? The higher the altitude is, the less amount of oxygen plants can have. Does this affect or build something in the development of the fruit in wine or coffee?
That's a very good question, and actually there hasn't been a lot of research done on the impact of oxygen, but to most agronomists, it shouldn't be such a big impact because the plants can perform very well with the level of oxygen that there is at that altitude. And we also looked at the atmospheric pressure on the different types. It doesn't seem to be the case, but I would not say, I would say that there's more research needed on that.
They're producing great wines now in Bolivia at 4,000, 5,000 meters altitude. And I guess that at that altitude, there has to have, even if it is a small effect, it has to have a small effect. Probably it'll slow down certain procedures, and it will give the opportunity to the plant to do things at a lower pace. So, from 0 to 5,000 meters, there's a big difference in oxygen, and it probably has to have some small effect.
All right, thank you for the great questions, guys. All right, I want to get a little more into the commercial side of this. A lot of people here in the panel and in the guests today know the challenges of marketing or selling a highly specialized product like Panama Coffee, Panama Geisha, certain low intervention wines or small producers. So I wanted to ask Obi a little bit on his experience. How has he seen the difference in consumer preferences in the past 5 years? What lengths do you go to educate consumers? And also, where do you see it in the next 5 years? And then we can talk a little bit about the other guys in the panel about coffee and the same issue.
Well, thank you, Benny. I don't know why I'm here too, but fine. I've always said I'm a professional drunkard, and I've never seen myself as a marketer or anything. But yeah, if we look at human history, you can always see that quality will always triumph over anything else. People will always look for quality, and sometimes they know, sometimes they don't. But I think if you have quality product, it will sell eventually, some way or another. And the medium through which it's being sold has changed. With people being more active on social media and all of this, but still the underlying factor is quality, and then also working with people that have passion with what they do, because passion is contagious. Without that, it becomes much more difficult. And if you look at like super commercial products or everything, they have to build a branding, and they have to really put it in with branding to be able to sell. But if you have quality and you have passion, it will just go naturally. As to trends that I've been seeing here in Panama recently, I think it was probably 2 years ago that we started selling more white wines than reds. And well, not here, but in the city, it's a much warmer climate, and of course, white wines we should sell more whites and drink more whites, but we had that classical preference for those big burly oaked reds. But I'm seeing the change that people are looking for wines that are more drinkable, they're easier, and they also fit the environment that we live in. It's sort of like going against the grain of tradition, but I think we're building our own tradition in a way. And what lies in the future, I think it's basically the same. People are still looking for quality, and I think it's innate to human nature to look for that quality. And I still believe that the best is yet to come. We will see, I think, more demand for smaller producers, people who are passionate about their land, about what they're doing, their projects, and it'll only grow from here. That's how I see it.
Beautifully put, and I agree with you. What about over there, Victoria, Ricardo? On the coffee side, you've seen a big change in buyers in the last 10 years. Also, some people still very used to their traditional coffee, at least commercially,
I think that there's two things here. One is that mass communication has really opened up the door for a lot of these things to happen, because 20 years ago, people could not communicate as easily as they can today. Whatever you do today, everybody knows it, can know it right across the world. And then if you put that together with the fact that 20 years ago, there was a lot less people, but the percentage of people and the amount of people that were educated and that had the capacity to buy higher priced products has exponentially increased in the last 20 years. So you put all that together and you get people that can communicate, and then now you have people that more education, and they're looking for experiences. So they're much more open to try new things. They're looking at where things are going out there. So that has really evolved. And the other thing is that what is happening is that what held us back for a long time was the fact that all the producing countries used to export their good coffees and drink what's the leftover. So we learned, basically on the Western Hemisphere, we learned to drink the coffees dark roasted with a lot of sugar and a lot of milk. So when we started with all these new coffees, we went to Asia because they were new coffee drinkers. They didn't have that chip in their mind that this is how coffee should be drunk. And also, they're coming from the wine, from the tea industry. And tea, you have a lot of floral expressions and different flavor profiles. So they knew about flavors, lighter brews that were not as heavy. Like you were saying, they used to drink heavier things. Now these are lighter products on the cup. And they also understood that things like this could have a high value. So they're expensive tea. So when they move into coffee, it wasn't hard for them to understand it. And that has been brought to the attention of the Western world, and that's what's changing the world. And now we got the new generations that are starting out that didn't drink coffee. They're the ones that are starting to go into this new system. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Something to...
Well, similar trends. People, at least in my country and many of the countries that I have visited, used to drink oak. So basically what they were drinking is oaky. And I can bet that if I give you 5 oaky wines, you would not feel any difference. So then people like Newport started producing wines in which you can actually taste the difference, feel the difference, and start having different flavors and different things. So I think we're being more educated, and we are trying to we are starting to differentiate different wines. We are drinking definitely more whites. It has to do with climate, but it also has to do with the fact that I think our kids that drink wine, my kids, our kids, well, they're for sure her kids. I hope they're mine, but they drink wine, and they usually smoke less, and they eat healthier, so they probably have a healthier palate, is the word. So they're learning to drink non-oaky, just red wine. So similar trends, I think, and that is going to continue to grow for sure. I mean, we are going to, I am not any afraid. Actually, this is not our last investment in the wine industry. We will not grow. I think Sandoval production over the capacity of its winery will probably get into a different venture, hopefully soon. And I'm not any afraid of quality wines. I think they're going to continue to be sold. Again, I don't think you should be afraid of not selling your wines, or Dirk and Danny should be any afraid of their wines. I mean, all of us fighting for their wines.
Thank you, guys. All right. I think we're all bastions for a good product, and we got to keep it going so more people get into it, no? Okay, I have a question about sustainability. I know Finca Sandoval does ecological wines, and you guys think a lot about where you guys are in the future of where you guys are at. Ricardo, also one of the few producers that actually work organically, at least in Duncan, which is extremely challenging here in Panama because of the weather. I want to ask you, both of you guys, what brought you to that idea? And if you have any concerns on, altitude, global warming in the future, and what steps you guys are taking towards that?
I'm probably the oldest in this room. So what I have seen is that you go from one extreme to the other. So I think we probably have overreacted in terms of some of the things we're doing. Having said that, we produce organic wines. We're in the process to consider biodynamic, but I still need to understand what that means and how that can really influence our wines. But for sure, that's the future. I mean, on the other hand, if we did not have the word organic in our wines, Northern Europeans wouldn't dare to drink our wines, even if they don't understand what we're doing. So that's definitely something extremely important. That is the future. But I think we have to be a bit careful or not to overreact and just not try to do everything at the same time.
So, the fastest resource agricultural resource that the planet is losing is the arable soil. It's being eroded, it's being lost very fast by erosion, by wind, rain, whatever any way you look at it. So we need to look at the sustainability in more than one way. There's also the idea that people needed to grow sustainable to protect the planet, but that hasn't moved very much because the market is not educated enough to pay what it takes to do that. So everybody wants it, but people are not willing to pay what it takes. It costs more to produce sustainable. A lot of times you're going to reduce, you're going to need to increase the shade, you're going to need to do changes that are going to decrease the productivity that you have. The way we're looking at it is how that's affecting crop quality. What we're finding is that if we start staying away from chemicals, and of course we do totally in the organic. In the other farms, we do pretty much, we only use probably the only things that we use is regular fertilizer, which is not considered organic, but it's, it's nitrogen. It's not anything that is like poisonous. But we're moving that way because what we've seen, and Panama has seen, is that the more we grow in a more traditional way, in a more what we call regenerative agriculture, the more we increase the microorganisms and the better the effect on the crop quality. But it takes time. So it is important, depends on how you want to look at it, and depends on what the market is looking for. In the case of coffee, what we're looking is for the crop quality. It's great that it's helping the environment and the climate, and of course that's important for us, but it serves more than one purpose. So I think that this is going to become a major issue in the world, and people are going to move that way. Both the market will have to understand it, to pay more for it, even though if it tastes the same, but also the producers will understand the positive effect that it can have. But it's a challenge, because if you're planting organic, like you mentioned here, Duncan Farm is the driest area of Boquete. If we try to produce organically here, our production will go to 5%, because we would get so many fungi diseases. And we don't actually, what we do is put certain products that they are very, what's called the green band of products. But they're not really considered organic. You have to go through certain processes and certifications to get the name organic. But there's a lot of things that you can do in regenerative agriculture, in bio systems that are good for the environment. So I think that it's going to be moving that way more and more.
But things that we can do in places like this farm that get so much more rain is to try and find the varieties that can match the place better. So I don't think you guys can see, but on that hill behind Benito, there's 2 different varieties that are bred for a higher disease resistance. So even if we have more fungi impact on this farm, we can find varieties that can resist them. So we don't have to be as impactful either on the fungicide side of things. So there's many ways to go greener in that way, in coffee.
Thank you, guys. So at this point, before we keep going with our heavy schedule, I would like to open the floor. I know already some people asked questions. Open the floor to any questions to any of the people here in the panel. Yes? Anybody has I'll bring a mic over. Oh, you got it?
No, it's the topic of the altitude. Sorry to come back for that, because we talk about temperatures and oxygen, but in the soil also changes in the altitude. How is the change here, or is all like homogenic, or is more rocky, or how is the change in the altitudes? Because for wine, yes, it's very important in the altitudes how the soil changes, but I want to do this question.
There isn't really a pattern here, because behind us, there used to be a volcano, a little bit behind us. It was called Cerro Azul. On the other side of the mountain, there's another volcano. Panama came out of the ocean 3 million years ago. And it was a bunch of islands that just came out because of all the activity that's underground, pushing the mountains up, and volcanoes. So it was a lot of volcanoes. So some mountains are all the way from the bottom to the top. They're the same type of soil because it just came out of the volcano. So it's more about where you are than how high or low you are. Also, the higher mountains normally have a smaller soil surface. They haven't, because they're newer. And if there was ashes that were coming from volcanoes, normally they fell in lower land. So the very top of the mountains normally are thinner soils than in the lower soils. But I wouldn't see a pattern here.
You have to work more in the fertilizing in the top than in the bottom?
Well, top and very hilly sides because of erosion. So you need to work more on trying to conserve the soil or try to bring, what we do is we look at what grows around, and there are certain times they're good. There are weeds, plants that grow naturally that are better for forming soil than others. So that's part of what we do. We're trying to find out what's good for that area, and we plant that, and we create soil there. So we try to, we have farms on the other side of the volcano that they were used for regular horticulture. They were used for potatoes, tomatoes, things like that. So they were plowed every year, and basically they were very rocky. And after about 7 or 8 years, now we have a mass of soil because we go for the first 3 years just letting, planting plants that they become soil, and then we go in with the coffee. So you can do, so we do work on the soils, and especially on the soils that have more problems, which are in the higher elevation and more steep areas.
And you have a catalog also of plants, in the elevations, which trees you want to increase, the quantity of trees, the native.
Yeah, but it depends on the area. So we look at what's there. So the trees on this side are not necessarily the ones that grow at the same altitude on that side, because it rains very different and the soils are very different on that side. So we need to look at what's around here. And there we look at what's around there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paz. Any other questions? Yes.
Well, we don't use any herbicides, so basically we let the weeds grow. That's a cover crop. It just covers the soils, and we are facilitating some cover crops more than others, but they're all native to the area, and they just grow there. Yeah.
But you selecting the seeds, or you just letting?
Well, we take away what we don't like, so we give more space for the ones. So broad leaves are better than grasses, for example. Grasses are not normally the best for the soil types. That if you want to regenerate soil, so what we let is sometimes we collect seeds, sometimes we just let it grow, and we take away what we don't like. So it gives space for that same plant to reproduce itself, and then they become more populated.
Okay. One more question. Yes, there is a biodynamic movement in coffee production farms.
Yes. Yeah, there is. Okay. It is. But again, I think like you say, we're still trying to understand the impact. But it's basically the same thing. You're trying to implement things that people used to look at. There are things like the moon, and when you should do this or that. And actually, we do know that there is an effect. The gravitational pull of the moon influences the amount of water that there's in a plant. You can see it very easy in a bamboo plant. You cut a bamboo plant with low tide, and it has no water inside. Cut it with high tide, it's full of water. The time it will last outside, we have bamboos in the lower land, so we used to, for certain type of constructions. So when we would cut the bamboos in high tides, they would rot in 3-4 months. If we cut them in low tide, they would last for months. So then we started looking at there are things out there that are affecting, that we've lost from the way our ancestors used to cultivate. So I think that some of those things are being put back into the system. we need more science into those things to try to understand. But
It is absolutely the case. I mean, full moon, number of suicides increase, and the temper of certain of women during their month, it gets worse. So it has an influence, that's for sure.
And I have seen that there's like a tropical biodynamic book specific for the tropics, because since we have different seasons and we have different rain types and just like overall cycles, then we cannot use, or as many people in the beginning of the biodynamic trend, they were looking at the books from the northern hemisphere, but they do not really correspond to us in this climate. So there needs to be twitches, and I know there people are experimenting with that.
Hippolyte, please.
So I'm a biodynamic coffee producer. And yeah, thank you. And I think in coffee industry there is a big misunderstanding about biodynamic. Biodynamic, it's not regarding the moon. Okay, agriculture is regarding the sun. And so the biodynamic farming is about a grammar, methodology. Okay, you have to use preps. If you don't use some preps, 8 preps, you doesn't do any biodynamic farming. If you don't use compost, you don't do any biodynamic farming and biodynamic compost. Okay, if you don't dynamize the water and the prep, you don't do any biodynamic farming. So I heard, so the biodynamic movement is nothing in coffee. You have 70 million of coffee producers in the world, but only 16 Demeter certified farms in coffee, okay? Yeah, absolutely.
Can I ask who
So,
is the certification?
Demeter. Okay, the only certification for coffee, in wine you have 2, Biodivin and Demeter, it's Demeter. So it's nothing regarding the production, okay? But it's very effective. So the second misunderstanding, it's you have some people that try to develop biodynamic, and I used to try to do here with some coffee growers. But they come from wine industry, and they apply the same methodology for coffees and they do for wine. And as you know, the trees and the needs of the coffee trees are the opposite of the wine, of the vine. So look at that. It's very rich soil. You need a lot of nutrients. It's undershed plant, so it's not what we call Apollonian plants. It's like Martial plants. So it's very different. And so you have to put a lot of nutrients. It's the reason why you use fertilizer, okay? Even if you do organic farming. So you have to mix a lot of ideas, a lot of farmings. In my 2 farms, we use Bioles. You heard maybe about Bioles. It's from the urban agriculture in Cuba. So it's a mix of fermenting. We ferment minerals, vegetables, and blood or bones from animals, okay? And we mix everything and we do a deep fermentation of that in order to have a very good fertilizer. So I know that Justin Bootman, everybody knows, and he passed away 6 months ago, said, okay, I do biodynamic farming. He was learning biodynamic with my farmers in Peru, Hector. And so it's, that I want to say, it's now we have no movement, okay? We start the movement, maybe. But the misunderstanding regarding what is biodynamic farming, it's very important because it's something very strange. And there is a taboo for me in specialty coffee. It's that everybody thinks it's not feasible to grow good coffee with organic farming. Why? Because all the national organizations who promote green revolution, and so fertilizer, pesticide, and every chemicals. Okay, so everybody here change the face of the coffee regarding the quality, and because the terroir is amazing, because the soil quality is amazing, because organic matter content, it's amazing. I don't know what is the rate of organic matter you have in your farm, but it's maybe 14%. Yeah, about 10. So if you have a look to the other culture, it's amazing because in France, it's like 1% or 2%. I used to do biodynamic farming in India with 5,000 coffee growers. It was 1.5% of organic matter, so nothing, it's dead soil. So I wish we will start biodynamic farming together. And it's very effective regarding yield. Okay, we are around 800,000 kgs of green coffee per hectare, with geisha, with sidra, with everything. But we put a lot of compost and everything.
Thank you for that feedback, Hippolyte. All right, we're going to keep moving to our next location. I want to thank once again our very esteemed panel, Angel, Gobi, Ricardo, Victoria, and the rest of the crew here. We'll get a chance to talk tonight and tomorrow, so we'll keep doing this conversation, okay? Thank you, guys.